This is Remote Daily, your daily dose of inspiration.
Please welcome
our guest today,
co-founder and chief marketing officer,
a force of nature,
filmmaker, astronomer,
percussionist,
Zoomfluencer,
an advocate,
serial entrepreneur and investor.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm really excited to be here.
That made me so happy.
Woohoo! Welcome to Remote Daily, everybody.
I'm just gonna trust that you guys are doing this with me.
Breathing in deep, starting in the belly.
I am centering myself in my decisions.
To me, COVID is like Mother Nature's message to the human species.
It means lots of change in what you had planned and you go a different direction.
At the end of the day, I'm thankful for being able to see the sunset yesterday.
Are you picturing someone in a white coat and scrubs, or are you picturing an immigrant on a bike?
I cannot sit around and wait for my ally to stand up and say, hey, this isn't right and they should get what they should get. It has to be me.
We all have to mobilize some kind of inner courage in us.
Here I am.
We all have to mobilize some inner courage in us. I think this is a great way to continue the conversation and say hi and welcome to the virtual stage to the founder and CEO of Hello Neighbor, Sloane Davidson, our guest today. Sloane, thank you so very much for being here. It's truly an honor.
Thank you so much for having me.
We just saw a few of the humans that have shared this space with us, and all of them have a very special story. Liz and I, when we were preparing for the session, thanks to Leonor and Dario, who pointed us towards you, we read a quote from you. You said, "I'm an only child, an oldest child, a middle child, and the youngest child." So what do you mean by that?
Right? I know. I mean, do you really want to know? Okay.
I wouldn't have asked. I wouldn't have asked.
Okay. Do you really want to know? My dad, well, it's funny because I tell it sort of fast now, but people get it more now. When I was in kindergarten, I'll say, I think like my first homework assignment ever, one of my first memories like seared in my brain was like, go home and draw a family tree, and everyone's all happy and marched home. And I drew mine and it was like all over the place and I cried. I was like so upset. And then as I got older, I think maybe it just became more, common, a mixed family, and people kind of got it more. But my dad was married to his first wife and they had 3 daughters. They got divorced. My dad married my mom and had me, and they got divorced. My mom married my stepdad and had my 2 little sisters, and they got divorced. And there's a whole other host of things that happened to all those branches. But ignoring those externalities, I am therefore the oldest of my younger siblings, the youngest of my older siblings, the only child within my parents' marriage, and the middle child between all of them.
Wow. And all that in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Yep. The neighborhood, the family connection that I discovered in New York as an immigrant and as someone who does not have immediate family there other than my own children and partner was actually after we got kicked out of 2 apartments in a row and decided to move to a different place in a different neighborhood every month for a year. And throughout that journey, which our parents, as you can imagine, loved the idea, but we did it anyway. In that journey, the most magical nights that we have had were our neighborhood dinners. So in every apartment, in every month, we would actually invite the neighbors on our stoop that we met there. The shutters that we are trees from, the people we had read and heard about in the neighborhood, the community leaders, and these people who had never met or heard of us showed up. And we just asked one question: what's your neighborhood story? And this question led to so many emotions and feelings and stories that the night was over like that. And it wasn't a dinner, we just had pizza, but the connections that were made were, to me, the strongest I had ever felt in New York with neighbors, with strangers. And as far as I can tell, your way of discovering your calling with Hello Neighbor also had to do with a dinner that you attended with your neighbors, and you met a family, I think, over Thanksgiving. So would you mind taking us back to that moment, Sloane, when you said, this is a family, this is a calling, this is all coming together here.
Well, first I want to say I love that idea of you bringing together your neighbors for dinner. It happens in so many different ways and iterations in communities everywhere. And I think that it speaks to a core need we have, introvert, extrovert, like people don't people, but we do crave human connection. And we do crave feeling like we have a tribe, like we have people that we would call to celebrate something and that we would call if something went horribly wrong or we needed support. You need someone to jump in an emergency. And so I think that and the second piece I would say, and I don't know if you found this when you hosted your dinners or if anybody else who's here today, has experienced this. We're in the Zoom room, as Jade said. And so technology does bring us together. And I do appreciate how it brings us together. But I also would say that we do crave offline activities. I say, all the relationships I have through the years of people I've met, maybe I continue them online in hopes that we can be offline again one day. And I think a big part of Hello Neighbor has been giving people permission. We don't need permission, but sometimes it helps to say, it's okay, step away from your computer and your devices in your home and step out, and do that community building in person and do it with maybe people that are new. So the dinner that originated with Hello Neighbor, as the story goes, is that after the election in 2016, was distraught like everyone else and was up late at night as one does, surfing the internet. And I found a program from Airbnb that doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Supper with Us. It was like a very temporary kind of pop-up thing that they were going to do, partnering with the State Department and partnering people together to share a meal. And I signed up and never heard anything. And I didn't forget, but it was like, you sign up for stuff. And I was like, oh, well, that sounded like something really neat. I would have loved to do that. And at the time I was really thinking about this idea for what Hello Neighbor would become. I didn't have the name yet. I had another working name. I was having conversations with people. I just started a mid-career master's program in nonprofit management, as much to give me a break from the working world and to have a kind of academic, like longer term lens. And so I was like, long thought, deep writing, like really working on this. And anyway, 3 days before Thanksgiving, I get a call. And I remember it because I was driving to pick something up. And I thought it was actually probably like a spammer. And the second I picked up and someone said hello, and I realized it was someone I didn't recognize, I was like, oh, I'm like, hello. And then there's lots of ways we say hello, I think, right? So anyway, that hello was like, oh, hi. And she said, hi. She was talking really fast. And it turns out she was a case manager at a resettlement agency. And she said, we just got your name from blah, 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 blah. All these channels, I guess it had to go through. Do you want to host a Syrian family in your home this week? It was Thanksgiving week. So I was like, oh, that would be so cool. They could come for Thanksgiving. What a great experience. See American meal. And then it occurred to me that I don't host Thanksgiving at my house. And because of my Pittsburgh family, we go to a few, we go to 3. So I sort of was like, I said to her, oh, I have a great idea. Can I call you back? And she said, yeah, call me back. So I hang up the phone. I called my stepdad. I thought this would be the best of my options. And I said, hi, I'm so excited about Thanksgiving dinner in 2 days. By the way, can I bring 5 people I've never met who don't speak English, who I think would really enjoy Thanksgiving, but I'm not really sure, could they come with me? And he said, let me call you right back. And he called his new wife, my stepmom. Like I said, it gets complicated. And he called me back a few minutes later and he said, always happens. He said, thank you for giving us the opportunity to be the kinds of Americans and Pittsburghers we say we want to be. How could we possibly say no? And he used a phrase from the Bible, fishes and loaves. And, it just means we'll pull up more chairs, we'll spread the food. He was like, the shopping's done, the budget's run out, we'll figure it out, go ahead and invite them. So I called the case manager back and I said, okay, great news. I've got it figured out. They can come for Thanksgiving. So she organized to have a interpreter actually drop them off. They didn't stay. So this family like walks in the door, and Thanksgiving dinners, you know, it's loud. There's like people, my child's running around, my Felix, you know, there's all these things going on. And we made it work. You know, I didn't know about their food preferences. Like at the time, you know, they were halal, so they wouldn't have eaten the turkey. Their English was only okay. They had been here about 6 months at the time. But at the end of the dinner, when it was time to leave, I said, well, I'll drive you home. You know, they were going to take a bus or something else. I said, no, I'll drive you home. And then I will say that I like people to stay in my web. I very rarely am like, okay, that was great, see you never. So I go to take them home, and instead of saying, thank you so much, it was great meeting you, you know, good luck to you, I said, what are you doing next weekend? You know, so it went from there, and they're like family to us now. We see them all the time. We do a lot of things together. And what I found over the course of a couple of months of getting to know this family were all the things I talked about. I mean, they're just an incredibly resourceful family. The dad went to work right away, so his English is not great, because that's what you got to do when you get resettled. He had owned a small business in their home in Syria. The kids were all going to school. The mom had gone to work, was practicing English. But they ended up coming to our holiday party and seeing their first Christmas tree, to Felix's birthday party. They invited us during Ramadan to an iftar. And, you know, we just started spending more time together. And like I said, what I realized more than anything is we would do these great activities together. But then after a couple of times, one time they said, do you mind coming inside the house? And I was like, sure. So I go inside the house, and Dad had just gotten home from work. We had just had a lovely outing at the museum. I had actually taken them to their very first time going to a museum, which was kind of cool. And the dad pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket, and he said, can you help? And I could tell immediately, looking at it, it was crumpled, like it had been in his pocket for a while. And like he was trying to figure out what to do. And the wife had been in the hospital briefly for something brief. And I knew that in my mind, I was like, he's worried that they didn't pay the full bill or that something went wrong. And I open it, and it's crumbled, and it's stained on the side, a little ripped, you know, he'd been holding on to it. And I look at it, and it's 13 pages long. It's like 8 font. And immediately my heart just sinks, because at the top it said very clearly, this is a survey. How did we do? And I just thought to myself, like, who else was he going to ask? He's carrying this around in his pocket, stressing out, so much anxiety, you know, trying to get your life back together. And it wasn't good or bad. It just is what it is. And sometimes that's all we need. You know, you need someone to like invite you to dinner. You need someone to accept their own humility, that they don't know everything, that there's a lot of things that we can share, and someone who's going to help you figure out some of those little things, not just the big things, but the little things that, you know, really impact your daily life. So anyway, that's the dinner story.
That's as far as Guinness go. Please unmute if you like, and just show your appreciation for our guest, Sloane Davidson.
That's amazing.
Well, you are awesome, and your stepdad is awesome. His wife is awesome.
He is. Yeah.
You're getting so much love here also from the chat. What a mensch, so amazing, incredible. A retweet, so cool from John. So I have to take a sharp turn now, though, because what you're doing and what you have been successfully doing is under scrutiny, because there is so much negativity in where I'm right now, in Germany, in Europe, in every place in the world. Refugees are the people that others don't want to see because of everything. Different, the scare, the other, and Rashad actually put a few more things here in the chat earlier. You know, the feeling of one being better than the other, the fear of, oh, there's going to be so many of them in our neighborhood, and what's going to happen with their presence. Is there like a refugee community popping up here? So how do you go about all of this? How do you encounter people that don't like what you do, and that are from Pittsburgh as well, and that are locals just like you, and that put that in your face? What do you say to them?
So I do want to say that, like, I mean, sometimes I wish we received more hate mail so I would have better answers for this. I mean, we really receive a lot of support. I'm not saying that everyone supports refugees. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, I'm a mile from Tree of Life, to be honest. And I grew up in the shadow of walking past Tree of Life every single day, you know, and that domestic terrorist attack that happened at the synagogue was because of one of the branches that practices there supports refugees. And that was the impetus for the terrorist to, you know, to go in and kill those people. So I am aware that there's a lot of hatred, and we do talk about Tree of Life pretty openly here because it's so real. It just happened, and we're aware of like the very real dangers that we can't see or hear. So I do want to say that I don't get a lot of it directly. I wish we did. We're prepared in social media, newsletter, like etc. It's happening. It's not necessarily as of right now coming our way. I think that what I do, however, is we look at the people who support Hello Neighbor, our volunteers, our mentors, our, you know, as our army. And we are very serious about an orientation and onboarding process for people to get involved with Hello Neighbor. The orientation is like a 3-quarter day. We offer childcare, food, guest speakers. We put together a manual that's about 60 pages that covers every topic: housing, education, all those things. But the main thing we go through is like a refugee 101. And we do a Mythbusters section. I can tell you all my favorite Mythbuster, which is that the idea that someone got a free ride is actually the opposite. Refugees that come to the United States are required to pay back their plane fare. And it's not a deal. It's not like bought on a deal day. It's full fare. It's usually about $1,000 per person. After you get a job, it starts coming out of your paycheck the way student loans would. And it's atrocious, right? And so they are immediately not even given a clean slate because they're in debt. So we try and provide Mythbusters. We try and provide data points. You know, I use a data point a lot. I said 80 million people around the world displaced. The amount of people displaced every single day could fill a professional baseball stadium. I think that's smaller than a football soccer stadium. So I don't know what a German equivalent would be. Those are bigger stadiums, but about 75,000 people a day. Okay. So that's a lot of people. So picture somewhere you've gone as a sporting event, every single seat is filled. So we try and kind of create some concepts around data and numbers. But then the other thing we do, here's the magic, is that I believe that we change hearts and minds by storytelling and through data. So if you just like layer people onto the facts all day long, I don't know if that works. But if you do the thing where you're like, oh, I had a Black friend growing up whose dad was a doctor, so all Black people aren't bad, that doesn't work either, right? You can't go on the one-offs. Like you can't talk about people with only one. So we provide both. So my goal is that a mentor or volunteer goes to their Thanksgiving dinner table and their workplace water cooler, their kids' soccer game, and they turn to someone next to them and they said, you know, I've gotten to know this Congolese family and they're fantastic. Did you know? And they use the two. They use their personal experience and the information we've given them. Quick story I can tell you. One of our mentors is from West Virginia, which is a neighboring state here to Pennsylvania, more rural. And about 75% of all Americans do not interact with a refugee or immigrant on a daily basis. I don't have the numbers for all the other countries that you all are in, but that's because people don't always live in urban areas. So if you're in a suburb, if you're rural, if you're in another place, you are just not maybe going to interact. So for a lot of people, supporting refugees and immigrants is a theory. If you do or you don't, it's not an actual like daily lived experience. It's like what you feel in your heart. So anyway, this mentor goes to dinner, a holiday dinner, and her brother turns to her. And as she tells me the story, she says, my brother, you know, does not support Black people, Jewish people, immigrants, refugees, like you name it. And he turns to her and he goes, you know, I've seen you posting a lot on Facebook about you getting to know this Congolese family. And her posts were not pro refugee, pro anything. They were just telling a story. They were just, we went out one day got ice cream. They came over and we played instruments together. They were just, it was sharing like you would with anybody. Anyway, he turned to her and he said, you know, I've been following along what you've been posting. And I have to say, I think I might feel differently about those people. If you hear it, it's there. right? He still calls it those people, but we've made a crack in the armor. We've done something to make him think about it in a slightly different way. It's an opening. What we do with the opening is an opportunity, but it's an opening. And so that's how I think about the people who are not supportive. Now, if you're way on the side of hatred, that's a different conversation. But I believe the majority of Americans and probably people around the world are somewhere in the middle. And I just want to move them up the spectrum bit by bit by bit, a little bit more through personal connection, storytelling, and through some data and numbers. And I think we'll have a real impact if we can do that.
What you share matters. And if you share the right things, it can change things for the better. Thank you, Sloane, for sharing that story with us. And yes, the storytelling that you do definitely works. I can tell by looking around the room here, and everybody's glued to you and your words. And you are also opening cracks around the country. So to close us off here, before I ask you how we can support you actively, I just wanted to shed some light around the fact that you have a network now, and I'm just going to put that on the screen share here, the Hello Neighbor Network. So wherever you are on this continent, I guess, there is something nearby that you can support, and I'm also going to put the link in the chat here so everybody can access this. What are they? Maybe there's, I mean, you're such an amazing storyteller. Maybe you can just name one organization here out of all the members that you have that just came to you with a surprise, or that you just want to highlight for us today. As a matter of fact, most of our community is sort of East Coast-ish, but there's also Central and West, so, and South as well. So yeah, wherever you want to go on this map.
Here's what I'll say. So the Hello Neighbor Network was born out of the idea, well, first of all, that being a founder is a hard and lonely road, and being a grassroots community nonprofit is also a hard and lonely road. So every decision, everything I had to do, I had to figure out by myself with my board and with other key people in my community, but I had to figure out. So other nonprofit leaders in my similar space and I started reaching out and talking. They'd reach out to Hello Neighbor because we got just some incredible media coverage, again, tied to the storytelling aspect. So we had some big national pieces, including one of the big nightly news channels here, NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt. And after that, people just started contacting me. And so what I realized on that call was that we could learn a lot from each other and that we shouldn't be competing. We're stronger together. And so I took what was an informal whisper network and formalized it and created the Hello Neighbor Network. So these are all nonprofits all around the country. If you recognize one of these places where you grew up, went to college, lived, have a friend, and they're all doing incredible work supporting refugees and immigrants at a grassroots community level, just like us. And one in particular that really speaks to me is Soft Landings Missoula in Missoula, Montana. They have taken a very white, mostly rural community and created an incredibly welcoming space for refugees. They have an annual soccer competition, like Olympics style, where the whole community comes out and they have a soccer tournament that goes on, and they have food from around the world that's served there. They have a food program where different refugees make food from their cultures, and they have pop-up dinners and restaurants around Missoula and do other things like that. Yeah, that's actually a photo from the soccer. And they do a lot of advocacy work around the state to support why the state should support refugees. The state has to say yes, in the US anyway, yes to supporting refugees. And it was just World Refugee Day this past Sunday. So that's that post in the middle. The other ones were, they've been celebrating graduation. So some of the kiddos in their program the last couple of years are reaching graduation age, which is pretty great. And so highlighting some of that. They recently moved into a space of their own, and they're growing, and it's fantastic to see. And there really, aren't that many support agencies in their state or in Missoula. But I think it's a very interesting model where people might assume this is only happening in New York, LA, Chicago, Houston, Seattle, Miami, but it's not. It's happening everywhere. The welcoming part.
Please share some virtual glitter and some love for our amazing guest, the founder and CEO of Hello Neighbor, Sloane Davidson. Sloane, thank you so very much for the love, the stories, the amazing work that you do, the network you have created, the impact that you have every day, all started by your own journey, by your local hometown, and by a dinner. And of course, the big question is how we can support you. I just read that, and I'm just going to put that in the chat. You actually just donated, together with the Walmart Foundation, $50,000 to grassroots, to organizations like the ones on the map we just looked at. But how can we support you? How can this community support you and what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. We became a funder this year. That's sort of crazy. We were a fundee, right, from foundations, but large corporations around the country, love them or hate them, want to support local and often can't because it's too small of dollars. And so we went to Walmart. They deeply believe in community, and we became a re-grantor. So they granted us the money, and we turned around and granted it back out to all of those partners that you saw, and they applied. So yeah, please click through that link and read through some of the projects that are happening around the country. They're so cool and meaningful. I would say a few things that are great to support Hello Neighbor. So, the number one thing, if you're moved by the story, I'm not gonna hide it. We're 4 years old, we're growing. Donations matter. A one-time donation or becoming part of our monthly giving circle, which is called the New Neighbor Collective. And that really is ensuring that we're sustaining and we can look ahead and understand what's coming up around the corner. COVID shook us to our core, and we rose. We've grown exponentially in our services and programs the past year. So that kind of support really does matter immensely, especially for small organizations like ours. The second would be, I would encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. It's on our website, helloneighbor.io, or follow us on social media, because we do great storytelling, and I think you'd really enjoy the content. We're really, careful around not oversharing or burdening all of you. I get as many newsletters as anybody else, but selfishly, I like ours. I think it does a really good job of sharing highlights and some links and some other things that are going on, and we do that in social media as well. The third thing I would say is talk about your support of refugees and immigrants as it comes up. That's really important. People should know how we feel about issues. We do this around women's health. We do this around other things we care about. Let's talk about the value of, being welcoming and what that means, and acknowledging the complexity, like I spoke about at the beginning. But I think it's really important for our politicians, elected officials, media, circles of influence to know, that we understand that we should be a welcoming nation, as we, have been throughout the course of our history. Well, complicated, but more or less. And for any of you not in the US, there's really great work that's happening. Of course, yes, it's partnered with challenges, but Canada has a fantastic model of community sponsorship. So for our friend on here from Canada, if you want to find something really meaningful, the Canadian community sponsorship model is incredible, and it exists in a lot of different places. And for people from other countries, I'm happy to help brainstorm with you if you want to email me and talk about ways to get involved.
Fantastic. I can only quote our Canadian friend Errol here, who wrote in the chat, "America needs many more Sloanes. In fact, the entire world." Thank you so much, Sloane Davidson,